Kind of stuff going on. And even so, today, out of the blue, under a marginal risk of severe thunderstorms, we had a tornado confirmed on the ground. It looked like it was going to be on the ground for a while there. We're just now getting some of the preliminary information about that. We do have a storm reporter too. The weather office there is going to be checking what's going on now, coming into Jacksonville out of the west as well. I'm meteorologist David Neal. You're watching LSM Television tonight as we are into we're into the heart of winter here, if you will, although sometimes if you just look at some of the data, it is hard to believe we're right into the middle of winter because we're having somewhat spring-like situations with our storms that are passing across the southern part of the country and moving on up out of Texas. We got low pressure after low pressure. This one, what's the difference about this one? A little bit further down to the low in latitude. It's a little further down to the Texas coast and then coming out, jetting off to the northeast. Speaking of jets, this one has a little bit more of a magnified jet, 80, 90 mile per hour jet max. It'll be rounding the turn, coming up through central sections of Mississippi into Alabama over time during the overnight hours on Tuesday, Wednesday. We still have a slight risk that is in effect for that time period. And so a lot of what we're going to be looking at here as we move along into our forecast data will be all about that. In fact, if we go right now to the radar and take a look at what's happening, meteorologist Brett Adair will be joining us eventually, I think, from time to time. He's on the road and he's preparing for what we are about to see, which is the data coming in from the radar here at the moment. There's your risk during the day on Tuesday. This is our 2-day risk, which has a slight that goes all the way up almost to Birmingham, Alabama, almost to Tuscaloosa, we'll say. In between there, it's about Clanton, Alabama. Actually, coming out of Montgomery is the furthest to the north that it goes, and then it goes down to the west a little bit along I-65 into that corridor there around Mobile, along I-10 west to east, going over into Louisiana. I-10 as far to the east as, Panama City, Florida, there around Destin, Fort Walton Beach area. That doesn't mean you can't have one out of the region because, look, there's that triangle right there, and we know we already had one near Sparks, Georgia today. The emergency management officials there saying that there was damage reported with the TDS signature that was there in Cook County a little bit earlier. That was about 4:21 there Eastern time. I think that was Eastern time. I think it's going to be local time there, but some damage reported. We're going to look into all that coming up here in just a few moments. Right now, that whole line, the linear part of the line has made its way onto the east. It looks like now Duval County's underneath a severe thunderstorm warning. I think that's going to be for the major part of Duval and Nassau County in northeastern Florida. You're underneath a severe thunderstorm warning due to 70-mile-per-hour winds from Yulee back over to Ratliff into that Briceville area, moving to the east at about 40 miles per hour. Yes, 70-mile-per-hour winds being reported there at the moment. It's a rather gusty situation going on there. There was some hail a little bit earlier, although I don't see that at the moment, but we're watching the radar out of Jacksonville. That's giving us a better idea of what's happening there near Ocean Way and the rest of the region there, too. It's going offshore. If Chris were with us, he's probably watching. There's some water spouts probably that are offshore there at the moment that we'd be looking at. All interest there, marine interests, if you are. Yeah, there's probably a couple of water spouts out there, but they're moving away from landfall. A little bit of spin right here, it looks like, just outside of Pumpkin Hill. That's the Creek Preserve State Park there. I've been there, actually, before. This is out there just to the west, Fort George Island there in the Naval Air Station at Mayport, or Biscayne Village, which is on the eastern side. A little spin you can see still going on right out there at the moment, but that's all headed offshore. That is not a reason for concern at this moment for anything else. Did they just drop? They just dropped our our severe thunderstorm warning that was there. They dropped that just now because the storm is moving a little bit further on to the east. Still plenty of rainfall there too, though. That's up and down the line that goes all the way back over into Charleston. There are some thunderstorms here on the eastern side of the Carolinas here as you get into southern sections of South Carolina. Beaufort, we got a couple here just to the east of Hilton Head in South Carolina. That goes all the way up the coastline here, it looks like, into Desto Beach and over to Folly. And the Isle of Palms, Charleston area there, we still have more with that situation there near Hollywood, it looks like. A little bit of inbound, there are these little markers there along the line. You can see there's a kink or two that shows up every once in a while, but it's not pure gate-to-gate shear at this point. It's not really in a situation that's going to bring heavy amounts of rain, thunderstorms, or anything like that. But this is your other stuff down to the south here that's just to the east now of Beaufort. And that'll keep moving offshore again. So no real harm or foul to the weather this evening As far as anything goes into the short term, it doesn't look like anything's going to really pop up that would be meaningful there overall. We'll just look at the radar, the composite radar across the nation. There's plenty of heavy rain that goes all the way up into Greensboro on the eastern side there, the Carolinas. We got the heavy rainfall from Greenville. Back over to Jacksonville, up to Kitty Hawk and beyond. More rain to the north there as well. Doesn't change over to snowfall until you get a little bit further to the north. There's a little mix here, it looks like, in West Virginia. Now passing back over to Harrisburg and beyond. Some of the snow is heaviest up here as you get a little further to the north of Williamsport, or back over to Utica into the Johnstown area near Schenectady and Albany. Go back to the west. You got some snow falling in the Youngstown Alliance. Back over to Pittsburgh. There'll be some snow coming in there here very shortly. Wheeling, West Virginia, you'll get a little bit of snow as this all passes the east. The operative word here is a little bit. I just don't think there's much more than that will be occurring. So let me get rid of this. The risk for the day today, again, is pretty marginal, and they could even back that up now or cut that off. They did. They cut that off. So the marginal risk is still, kind of in this little area here along the state of Florida as you go out of the Big Bend and move south or down the peninsula or up the Atlantic seaboard into the mid-Atlantic. There is still that possibility for a few isolated thunderstorms there, too. Then back to the west, not a whole lot going on. You got some snow in Wyoming. Billings to Montana, back over to Arizona, a little bit of snowfall here too, but that's where the next system's going to kick up and pop off as we move along here in time, and you'll start to see more and more in the way of precipitation coming on the backside of this as low pressure. See it right there. It is right about Mesquite and Vegas. You can see there is some spin going on there. Why is it doing 200 frames? Stop it. That's just way too many. Let's go back down to about 30 or 40 here. And here we go. So there's your low pressure kicking up, moving on eastward. Adjacent little boundary down to the south here as well. This is our long-wave IR infrared imagery. Don't ask me to say that again because now I got feel like I just had a lemon or something. It's the IR infrared satellite imagery there. Got another storm system coming on shore here into the west. The never-ending rivers of atmosphere that are coming on into the west, Pacific North and west. That's what we're kind of looking at there, too. And this situation is going to be a little further to the south. This is not a situation that's going to bring a lot of snowfall into Denver or beyond. It's a little further south this go-around, it looks like, into the modeling, as you will see here and momentarily. So we'll be getting into that in more detail here coming up in just a little bit. I prepared sort of a little show, if you will. If we could prop that up here in just a couple of seconds, we'll take a look at what we're looking at as far as satellite data and our forecast beyond. We're going to be talking about both those things as we move along, and we'll get Brett in here in just a few moments to talk about what his plan is as we move along, too. You can see the satellite. Now, this is satellite imagery here that gives us an idea of right before dark what the visible satellite image looked like. The puffiness there to South Alabama. You're looking at South Alabama, North Florida, and the state of Georgia. And that's the elongated area coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. They moved into the deep south along a low pressure that's made its way onto the east. Enough instability into Georgia for this to kick off a little bit of rotation. And so those late evening showers is about 3 or 4 o'clock. We've got our first tornado warning down there. Kind of north and east of Bainbridge, where it started to spin, and it made its way on up through the rest of South Georgia there before it ended across that region there. This is a satellite sandwich view, which is a combination of the visible and the infrared satellite data, which gives us an idea of what was happening. Again, before dark. I love these because you get the sunlight that is masking on the eastern side, where you've got the shadow effect going on with the bigger thunderstorms there, where they'll still move on west to east. Got some broken cloud cover down there into Duval County before it hits the fan. And that's when we had that severe thunderstorm warning. 70-mile-per-hour winds, which is an upgrade to just your typical run-of-the-mill severe thunderstorm warning. So they did have, in order for it to go up 10 miles per hour, somebody reported a high wind there. Probably just outside of the Osceola National Forest there and beyond. Water vapor gives us another idea of when these thunderstorms blew up right there into the afternoon. The green colors indicating where you have most of the moisture there. The yellows and oranges indicating the drier air mass, as it were, moving through during the latter part of the afternoon. The lightning enhancement, there you go, right over the Big Bend of Florida, coming out of Bay County, Walton County there in northern Florida, and then working its way into southern sections of Georgia. And then right out here is where it really started to pick up in the lightning data. This is, again, from the satellite enhancement to give us that idea, and a steady movement off to the east as it kind of did so and built in that general direction off eastward. And this started to clear out. Actually, I think we had some clearing skies into the western side of Alabama down there. Mobile probably beginning to clear out here, as well as much of Montgomery back over to the west and the state of Mississippi, too. We got some clearing skies that are taking place there also and working their way on eastward. So that's what the radar imagery looks like at this point. Through the day today, we saw the thunderstorms building. Now, that's a situation that won't happen tomorrow, but when we get to Tuesday, we'll have sort of the same thing happening as we get into the latter part of Tuesday, because we'll begin to see some changes that will occur, and we'll get into those, like I said, in just a few moments. We'll have some of the new data coming in. It's about time to get our new NAM forecast data in, so we'll be passing that along to you here as well as we move along. Here's an enhancement as well, kind of like this one. This gives us a pretty good idea of where the thunderstorms were developing late this afternoon, just along the boundary as it moved on to the east, and then beginning to blow up as they made their way further and further off to the east across the rest of that region. So no big deal there anymore, because we're seeing those cooling off. The whole area is beginning to do so. The cool air that is aloft is offshore now. So things are looking a whole lot better overall in that whole scenario as we move along, too. The big deal here is going to be as we move on through the next 48 hours, we'll start to see more and more in the way of precipitation building from west to east. And I'll just go right now and take a look at what we do have as far as the precipitation goes and where we're going with some of our modeling. Always one of the first things we do here is we take a look at where our dew points are. It's the simplest form of instability that you can look at on a map and let you know what's happening with the amount of available moisture, which then goes into the equation that brings us Cape values and the like, is first of all where we're going with what is in general going to be our dew point conditions. And you can see how they've all been suppressed back down into the Gulf of Mexico, at least the 60-degree line, which is what you're seeing here when you see the changing colors. This is going to be the difference between 60-degree, this color right here, and 50-degree dew point conditions. And I'll just kind of show you. There's the 60 color. And these are isotherms, lines of equal temperature, and this is going to be the 50s back here over into the green. So it's 60s and 50s, even some 70s, though, as you can see down into Tampa, St. Pete, and the rest of the area right there, too. Want to bring the man, the myth, the legend on in just a couple of seconds. I can see him in my picture here. You can't see him just yet, but we'll be talking to Brett Adair. Brett, first of all, if you can hear me, you are in preparation, making your move down to get at least an initialization point for the storms as they would build into Tuesday. And now that we're getting some of the new models that have just come in, some of the short-term models, i.e. the NAM, whatever, what are your thoughts?
Dynamic system. So far, from what I can tell, I have not looked at much today. Let me get some lighting over here. Have not this evening, but again, dynamic system in the area, moving across portions of the deep south. Yet again, we dealt with some tornadic activity today that was, not really what I would call expected. Maybe an isolated one or two. It looks like we may have had a pretty damaging tornado or two over there across portions of Georgia. So things continue that trend of an overperformance. So given such dynamic system coming into the area, I don't think it's going to take long to drag the moisture back toward the north for us to deal with, potential problems, at least in a narrow corridor across central southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, Alabama, as we go into later on Tuesday and early Wednesday with the system sliding in.
Yeah, we were kind of looking at where the risk is at the moment. It's a slight risk again. We've just seen today what a marginal risk, what can happen, especially when you start flirting with these dew points. It was kind of ironic in that last night we were all kind of joking around in our discussion that we had amongst ourselves with the dew points, where we had like 70 over 70 there to New Orleans. We had 70. I can't remember the highest one, but it was like, see, while you at home, you're probably playing family games, doing some really nice family interaction and stuff, playing family games and that kind of thing. We're playing what's the dew point into the Gulf. That's the difference between me, Brett, and you at home probably there, because you're normal and we are not. So, but yeah, we were looking at that last night, and it was 70 degrees. In fact, I'm gonna write that down because that's a new board game. What's the dew point? What's your dew point? Anyway, we were talking about 70s last night, Brad, and like you just said, it probably won't take long to bring those back into the area again. In fact, I'm looking at the NAM right now. I don't know if you can see the return in the screen, but they should be coming back. The dew points will first of all build back into Houston and then kind of warp over that way as we go through time.
Right. And honestly, I could see the risk getting raised. I'm going to tell you now, if the
Tell me.
instability is there, there's a lot of shear. There's a lot of positive for some stronger type tornadoes, even longer track type tornadoes. But not even that. Even as it stands with very low instability, we've got low level jet numbers of 70, 80 plus knots coming across with this thing. I believe the damaging wind threat there on that frontal push is going to be just as substantial. So I could see at least an enhanced type risk getting issued, maybe even for just a wind threat, much less the tornado threat. But if we get higher instability, higher dew points than we have seen over some of the forecasts the last 24 hours, a little bit further inland, we could have a really substantial issue here, not to mention very hard-hitting winter storm on the northern side of this, maybe as far south as far northern Texas down into Oklahoma. The northern Ozarks are going to get pounded with some snow, I believe.
Yeah, I saw that. I know I got a friend going to Branson with his family going to Branson, and he was asking me, he said, what about it? I said, what about it? Because I keep seeing Branson kind of in this little belt there that might get walloped there. We'll look at that in just a couple of minutes. And Jarvis, I don't know if you still have that availability, but if you could get our clock that's way up there at the top that I don't think anybody else but me can see, and pull that down larger, if you get the opportunity, if you can work on that, because I'm sure you got nothing else to do. There's the temperatures, though, Brett, in the return right now. You can see as we get to 3 o'clock on Tuesday, where the dew points are hanging tough there, but they do come up. You can see the actual cyclone beginning to build here. We'll have dew points that get all the way up into Lake Charles here. That'll be well into the the 60s, if not the mid and upper 60s on that I-10 sort of a stretch, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's the corridor we're going to kind of hang on really between there and New Orleans on Tuesday. New Orleans has been kind of a hotbed, not your typical place to get tornadoes that are of intensity, but over the last 2 years we've had, or the last 12 months, not 2 years, January of 2022, and then we just had another one, went through the same portions of southern New Orleans, Araby, right there along the Mississippi River. Very strong tornadoes, talking stronger EF2, EF3 type tornadoes that actually killed a couple of people from each event. And that's kind of got us on guard here. So considering it looks like this area may see those higher dew points surge in maybe ahead of the cold front, a little bit ahead of time, we're going to have to watch for any cells that develop and come off the Gulf of Mexico and move up as well.
Yeah, so let's kind of take a look at the reflectivity here about that same time, and this looks kind of linear. This is 3 o'clock into the, let's see, that's actually 6, but let me go back just a little bit more. On Tuesday, 3 o'clock, this has a big, long, linear stick-looking kind of thing coming out of Longview, between there and Tyler, it will say on I-40, 20, excuse me, and then all the way down to Houston at that point. This is the old NAM from 18Z today. And I haven't compared it to anything, but it's probably pretty close, I would think, to everything else as far as the timing goes. That's a linear thing. You think we'll see cellular stuff in Louisiana about now? About 3 p.m. by Tuesday?
I think it's possible. If you look there, you've even got some little boundaries there that are, northwest to southeast oriented over central Louisiana, going towards southeast Louisiana. Those could be what we call areas of confluence that could allow for something to develop there. If anything can develop south of that warm front and stay south long enough, it's going to be in a very unstable and sheared environment. And as it approaches the front, it's going to have extreme shear where it could potentially spin down. But even within that line, there's so much wind shear. You could get, several tornadoes within the line just because of the directional and the speed shear. And some of those could be strong themselves. So we're worried about the line, and we'll definitely be watching for anything that can pop out front.
Yeah, so here we go. We're going into the 4 o'clock hour, 5 o'clock hour, 6 o'clock hour. The linear thing gets right along the coast. Sabine River, we'll say, up and down the Sabine River all the way over to Shreveport by dark on Tuesday. And then there's more development now. And now at this point, you see the warm fronts all the way up to Little Rock, probably into North Mississippi here along Highway 72, into that region. A very well-defined cyclone now over Dallas, and surface cyclone that'll start to lift on to the east, of which the western side will probably start to get cold enough to bring in a switch over around the very northwestern fringes. Let me see if that does show up. That shows a huge switch over, actually.
Yes, that is a very, very dynamic system.
Is there
you're
that
talking
much
over
coming into Fort Worth? I
You're
didn't notice
talking
that.
potentially over a foot along and north of the Red River now. A lot of the high-res models and even the globals are picking up on a substantial hit of snow, especially from areas from DFW north, but really the Red River north, because that area where the low pressure at the surface is pretty vertically stacked with the low aloft at that point. So you got
Yeah.
all the cold air right entrenched, and you've got basically top-down cooling going on. And yeah, there could be a really big hit. I mean, the snowflakes that we usually see in the deep south, those quarter to bowling ball size type
Yeah.
snowflakes, is what they're going to see out there.
Huh. I didn't realize. I really didn't realize. I knew there was going to be some, but I thought the corridor was going to be a whole lot smaller than just the whole northwestern corner of the low itself. But then that kicks up. That's about 3 o'clock into the afternoon. There we move along. Again, you got your severe weather down to the south. It looks like still moving through Louisiana at that point. But up to Norman, there's some heavy snow. Looks like they're down 35. All the way down to 35 and, like you said, into the Red River. But on that western side of Dallas, it's a super close call there, especially if you're looking at dynamic cooling that'll be taking place there. Brett's dropped out for just a second, but that's kind of what we're looking at here. This is a very – so when you get this, now when you know you got a dynamic system like this that's going to have evaporative cooling on the northwestern side, enough to bring the temperature down in the column swiftly – it's always typical to have a severe event off on the southeastern side of it, and I don't think this is going to be a case where it's going to be any different, really. Let me get back to this again. Now, I'm kind of looking at old data. I'm stalling to get the 0Z data that just is beginning to fill in, and I really like the high-res stuff when you start talking about that. Let me see if the HER gives me I can look at the 0Z HER by now, I think, and get the whole complement of it, which goes out 48 hours at this point. And so we'll back it up here and take a look at reflectivity. The HER is another high-res solution that we look at when we start talking about these sort of scenarios here. And we, again, here's your timing as it comes on in. We've got, stop it, still moving there. So we've got all this stuff. Now, some of these things, here's what Brett and I were just sort of talking about. This is what's concerning because the front's still lagging, but now into the warm air, you can see some of these cells that are coming in, even off of the Gulf of Mexico, that just look wicked, indicating cellular development, maybe even water spouts turned tornadoes at this point, coming in very quickly here along the Gulf Coast and moving on eastward. So all this looks like a sheared environment through this area that will be maintained through the period. This is 2 o'clock into the afternoon. That's only a situation that would worsen, but at least at 2, I can see now that the HER believes we have cells at this point. Headed across I-10, coming on up into Louisiana at this point. There's going to be some areas there where we'll have super heavy rainfall, too. By this point, our warm front looks like it jets all the way up into North Alabama and beyond. This is 48 hours in advance. And again, here's your precipitation that has switched over at this point. If you look at the type, now we're talking about the very heavy snow. A little bit of a mix here from time to time, but very heavy snow. Dallas-Fort Worth all the way to the north, especially as you get up here into Oklahoma City and westward toward Amarillo along I-40. I don't know. I don't really like when you start looking at these 10-to-1s, especially when you start talking about ratios, but if you go out until 6 p.m., some of these ratios are really high. They've got some of this up to 6-7 inches of snowfall from Lubbock. They're along the Red River and really just beginning to materialize back up in Oklahoma City along I-40, eastward over to Arkansas and beyond and throughout the rest of that area there, too. That is into the HER at the moment. Let's see where we are with the 3K. We're just down to 23 hours. Come on, baby. Let me see if I can go out to the 12K and see what we got here, if we got anything different. The 12K will start to build in here. This is, when I say that, I'm talking about resolution now. So it's not going to be as sharp. It's not going to be as what you would consider true radar representation at this point. It's very fragmented, and it's going to end up looking kind of broken and aliased and that kind of thing. Here we go. Stop. Stop. Go backward. So this is I think this is almost the full complement. Well, it's not. It goes out to 3. It goes out to Wednesday. But we back it up. There's your linear thing, and we go back into time here. Now we've got this whole linear thing coming out of Houston at 3, 4, 5 into Lake Charles at about 6 o'clock as a line. But now you got cells. You can see them. See how they show up here? These are cells right in here and here and here and probably here, which... they're not, it's not exactly where they're going to be. You don't take that as an exact number. You take that as a sign that maybe at this point we have individualized cellular growth that goes all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. Here, 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 and here, and here. And so now out advance of our line, the linear part of this, it does look cellular, and that's where you'd have the more likelihood of a substantial tornado that might occur into both of these areas here as we go forward. There's your low pressure center there and the adjacent cold air behind the thing. Dew point conditions at this point, still kind of hugging the coast as far as that goes. If I go a little bit forward here with our dew point conditions, the Cape values are not going to come too far to the north. I mean, actually, it gets pinched off here around Mobile. You got high numbers here up I-65, maybe all the way up to I-20 at this point into Meridian, over to Montgomery, somewhere like that. Dry air already starting to fill in back to the west here. And the two things that we'll be talking about is not only how much rain, precipitation has fallen, but how much snow has fallen. In a 10-to-1 scenario, that gives you a belt right here where you just get crushed into the central Oklahoma City region, back over to Fort Smith, Branson, Missouri. I don't know my friends watching, but check this out into Branson. By this point on Wednesday morning, there's going to be some 10, 12 inches are possible in some of these areas here. That's at a 10-to-1 scenario. This could be a little bit greater ratio, if you will, maybe like a 15-to-1 in a few areas, and maybe like a 6 or 8-to-1 in a few others where it has to actually cool the column as a whole. Kind of depends on where you are, but then again, it's coming down pretty hard in some of these regions, and as a result, that would certainly be our deal. So if you look at it, we're not going to have high Cape numbers because of those dew point conditions that we just saw a few moments ago. You can see they follow the dew points pretty much, which is indicative here of having, let me put that over here. Actually, I'm going to put that right there, and I'm going to do... No, I'm not, because I can't. Anyway, so we get pinched off with Cape values. Those aren't very high. We didn't have high Cape values today, though, and look what happened. So, had a 50-mile-per-hour wind today, by the way. This is a storm report coming in. 53 miles per hour there. It's at Tallahassee International Airport. There, the ASOS, they did have a wind gust in Leon County, Florida, 53 miles per hour, just outside of Gaston County, Florida. Both of those that actually occurred there into that area, too. So, here's the other thing I want to talk about. Can I do this with this? Maybe, maybe not. Brad was talking about, too, one of the other things that we do have going on here, and it doesn't show up here very well. Let me see if I can get it to show up in something else. We're going to have a pressure gradient that will be occurring here at the surface, which means we're going to have high winds in all of these areas, too. The winds are going to pick up in all locations here as we go through, and the actual cyclone itself lifts and moves off to the northeast pretty rapidly. We're going to end up having those indications there that would tell us we got some 40 to 50 mile per hour winds that'll probably be moving through the belt as the whole thing moves along too. Right about there is your cyclone, the adjacent area of precipitation that'll be with it, will be out ahead of it. But that's going to bring some high wind speeds in here too. We'll be looking at the winds quite possibly getting up into that 50 to 60 mile per hour range on the east and south side of our low pressure system, which I think is going to end up being sort of a belt like this. That would be some 50 mile per hour winds plus beginning to show up. Some gusts, it may even be higher than that, but I can see there being a belt here out ahead of the actual frontal boundary, because the winds at 700 millibars get up into the 60 to 70 mile per hour range anyway. So you're talking about some high wind speeds here that might translate down to the ground at this point, which is concerning to us. Where does the front go after that? It continues to move, and by the midnight hour of Tuesday going into Wednesday, Up and down I-55, we're about 10, 15 miles east of I-55 that goes north-south through Mississippi. There'll still be some thunderstorms here, but now you're really getting pinched off with availability of moisture. At this point, you can see the singular cells that were back here in Louisiana don't show any longer. Now it's a very linear situation by 9 o'clock. So I think the wording, at least for the moment, would be during the day, during the afternoon, cellular storms may pop into eastern Texas, southwestern Louisiana, followed by a congealed line that would be taking shape right about dark, going into Tuesday afternoon into early Wednesday, and pushing on across the area there too. There it goes over to Jackson, eastern sections of Mississippi, western portions of Alabama, coming into, say, Birmingham, Tuscaloosa in the overnight hours, 3, 4 o'clock into the morning, passing on through the state. But even though it's a broken line at this point of lesser value, the wind is still going to be there. The gradient wind will still be likely because we've got a decent little high pressure that should fill into the east, and then we've got this deepening low pressure making its way off to the northeast into the Ohio Valley at this point, with its adjacent snowfall that'll be headed along the line there too, and that's going to be the reason for this to produce those high winds there on the south side. And then this ends up being a pretty good belt of snow headed onto the east. This will be moving through Missouri, Jefferson City, into the St. Louis region with some heavy snowfall. At this point, it looks like your range snow line is going to be right there into the northern sections of the Ozarks, Ouachitas, into the western portions of Kentucky around Paducah, Cape Girardeau, up to Evansville. This is the Ohio River that goes northeastward, and you'd find some of the greater snow amounts that'll be along and north of the Ohio River, back into Louisville, Cincinnati, into Georgetown and beyond, maybe over to Chillicothe there into the central sections of Ohio too. Some of the heavier snowfall will move in there with some 1 to 2 inch per hour kind of readings here. If you look at some of the modeling data, it does indicate that that could be the case right there in the middle of the belt, and probably south of Chicago at this point. It's a somewhat thin belt as it goes off to the northeast, and then pushing on eastward we'll go back up into western Ohio, Pittsburgh, getting in on some of the act there, but you're right on the border as well. I see a couple of hours of maybe some heavier snowfall, but I think you get dry slotted there in western Pennsylvania and then northern Ohio as well. The dry slot will be coming in from your south and west and doing this kind of a thing right there, and that means less precipitation with the outer boundaries of the low cyclone itself producing the highest snowfall. Peoria, Chicago, then you get in on it, South Bend, Indiana, and Fort Wayne, Toledo, Detroit, western side of Lake Erie, and Lake Michigan for that matter. You'll see some of the heavier snows that'll be continuing there. This is nothing to do with lake effect at this point, and it wouldn't until the low goes by. But this is coming in on the southwestern side of all this as it does continue to move on to the east. What else can I show you here? That's the NAM. If we go to the GFS, I don't think anything's going to be really different. Timing-wise, the GFS is a little faster. I think it was a little earlier during the day today, and maybe not as robust with the amount of precipitation there, but still looks heavy. And you can draw that line in central Arkansas along I-40, then all the way down 35, it looks like 30, 35 going into that area where you could have some of the heavier precipitation over into the National Forest, Ouachita National Forest, up to Fayetteville and beyond. Very dynamic. That'll be the word. That'll be the key. That is the buzzword. I don't know how many times we've said it already, but we could say it a whole lot more. It's a dynamic system that'll be showing up that's going to bring precipitation and lots of it in some form or fashion, with a big low pressure center there that will deepen pretty rapidly coming out of Texas, move eastward back into the rest of that area and beyond as we go through time. I'm going to have the mouse for just a minute because I want to see if there's any questions that I could answer for you. Do we have any questions here at the moment? I see Samuel Camp is with us. Josh Burnham is here with us. He just made a profound statement. He said he should, and he really, that just goes without saying. Will he come back if he gets it back? I am way behind on these questions here. Let me do this. Hold on a second. Wizzleman, today is just another reason why you don't listen to SPC. Wizzle, come on. Wizzle, how do you say that? I mean, what did you want? What? Seriously, Wizzle, talk to me. Whizman. Let me get over here because I hope you're still there. I need you to talk to me. Because, I mean, this is a discussion that needs to be had. Today is another day you just don't listen to SPC. What did you want? What would you think would have been appropriate for what happened today in South Georgia? There was likely one tornado, maybe another one. We had 2 tornado warnings about 40 miles apart at one time, but there was really one tornado. So what, Wizzle? Be a man here and talk to me. What do you think SPC should have called the day today? What do you think it was? You think it was... What does one say to you? Doughboy, what do you think? I don't know if it is Doughboy, but Eastern Canada. We'll talk about Eastern Canada in just a couple of minutes up into Quebec. I love that you're on here with us if you're from Quebec. Eric says hello. Samuel Camp says, what happened to Brett? He was in his car, in his automobile, so... Just like you'd be driving down the road talking to somebody, and all of a sudden you realize you've been talking for about 4.5 minutes, and they haven't been talking back, and you go, do you hear me now? We don't see Brett now at the moment. Brett be gone. But he'll be back. He may be back. I don't know. I'm going to tell you, if there's a one-armed bandit somewhere close by, he may not be back. But Arizona's in the house. Princess Smokahontas. That's a great name. I don't know if it's a great name. It's a great name. I didn't know the real Pocahontas, but give me some hope for some snow here in Bama. Dude, Josh, actually there looked like there was going to be an event. If the low pressure coming up next weekend was going to be a little bit lower, and it was lower. It was lower in latitude to begin with. It's pushed a little bit further to the north over the past couple of runs, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. It made 3 runs there. Anytime that 3 runs goes by in either the extended forecast, I'll talk about it. Not 1, not 2, but 3 runs, and I'll talk about it if it's 10 days out ahead. Doobie, I might be mispronouncing this. Doobie Boy 21. Is this Michael McDonald? Just be honest. I want snow in Bama. Wendy, you want snow in Bama? We're trying. Nobody likes snow more than me. No one. None of yous out there can say you like snow more than Dave Neal. Because I love it, love it, love it. I think in order to make, if you knew how hard it was to make snow, you people who live up north or back into the west or somewhere where it just snows at the drop of a hat, you people are kind of, you make me sick because you don't appreciate your snowfall. We here in the South, if we see a flake, we really appreciate it because it's such a rarity. And here in the South, it is so difficult to make a snowflake, just based on the whole concept that once a snowflake, always a snowflake. Once it leaves the cloud base, if it's a snowflake then, it can't change into something else and then turn back into a snowflake again. It's actually a very sad story. If we had some music, can you play some music? Turn some sad music on, because I'm going to tell a sad story. So once a snowflake leaves the cloud, there's actually nobody else here. Once a snowflake leaves the cloud, if it melts, it can't turn back into a snowflake again. It can turn into a number of other things. Grapple, it can turn into, hard snow grain. It can turn into freezing rain at that point if it wanted to. If it turned back into liquid, it could freeze on contact, which is freezing rain. Sleet is frozen when it makes it down to the ground. But it can't turn back into a snowflake. So once it leaves the cloud, if it melts, it cannot become a snowflake again. Not a dendritic, pretty little snowflake like you see in all the pictures. So, you people up north, you don't appreciate it like we do here. And it's not a big deal here. It wouldn't be a big deal if everybody and their brother who can't drive anyway wouldn't go out and try to drive in the snowfall here into the deep south without any kind of tires whatsoever. Everybody's got slick tires here anyway, so. We had a bunch of snow one time. We had a big event that was coming up here in the state of Alabama, and I remember because I was working in television at the time, we had to call Hickory, North Carolina and borrow a snowplow because we didn't have one. Not one that worked. And that was back in the day. We used to borrow snowplows from adjacent states. Lizzie, you learned something? Cool, Lizzie. I'm glad. Yeah, that whole story behind the snowflake, it's an event. It's like a HBO movie event kind of a thing, because if it leaves the cloud as a snowflake, and it has to start as a snowflake, it can't start as something else and then turn into a snowflake. It has to leave the cloud as a dry dendritic snowflake with all those points on it and everything, a little pretty little snowflake, but then it can't become anything else and turn back into a snowflake again. So it's a very difficult process when it comes to that whole dynamical process that has to take place in order for that to happen. The column from the snow, the bottom of the snow cloud, all the way down to the surface must remain 32 or below in order to prevent that from taking place. And so oftentimes here into the deep south, we have a little tongue somewhere, a couple thousand feet off the ground. It's this little layer that comes in out of the Gulf of Mexico that's right above 32. It's like 34, 35, 33. And our little snowflakes melt. And then you're left over with, rain in 36, which is just abysmal. It's been raining here all day today at my house in North Alabama. It's 42 and been raining like pouring pee out of a boot right now, like a bovine on a flat rock. It just is pouring down. The gully washers that are taking place, toad stranglers, whatever you want to call them, it's up. All the creeks, rivers, and streams are all way above. Here at the moment, we've had a couple of inches of heavy rainfall here. It's been kind of saturated as we've gone along anyway. So, Lizzie, that's very sweet of you. She lives in South Carolina, by the way. It's a family event. See? She knows what I'm talking about. Thank you, Lizzie. I appreciate that. My mic. Hold on. Is that better? I don't know. That TV set right there is all. Wendell, what's up, Wendell? Nothing beats North Carolina, but Bama's got some nice waterfalls. We do. I'm about 20 minutes from Gadsden. Dude, I grew up in Gadsden. I grew up across the street from Nakalula Falls. I went to there's a little elementary school. It's not that big. It's big. It's bigger than that. I grew up and went to school there. There's an elementary school there right across from Nakalula Falls, up on the mountain there, Nakalula Mountain, just outside of Tabor Road. I went to school there, played ball there. I used to go to Nakalula Falls when there wasn't really a fence around the whole thing. When I was a kid, we had some beautiful, that's the difference between, so I lived out in Colorado for about 10 years. The big difference between that, when you talk about a waterfall, a friend of mine wanted to take me to a waterfall there in Colorado, and we went to this waterfall there in Colorado. And so we got there, when we got to her waterfall, and it had like 4 names in front of it. It was the Arapahoe such and such and such and such a waterfall. And it was kind of like, it was like, this was her waterfall. She took pictures, tons of pictures of it, just picture after picture. And I said, seriously? Is this a joke? Can you bring me that mop? Ray lived in Florida for 12 years, and it snowed one time and melted an hour later. It was 1982, wasn't it, Ray? Was it not 1982? Samuel Camp says, I know, and nobody in northwest Alabama can drive on a sunny day anyway. That is true. That is a true statement. We got a bunch of Alabama people here tonight, Wendell. I avoid Gadsden at all costs, but Nakalula is nice. High Falls is my favorite. Massive and a good swimming spot. Yeah, they don't let you swim at Nakalula Falls. Not right there. Anybody else out there got any questions? I know it's not just in Alabama. DJ Moore is laughing. I don't know any of these abbreviations. I believe that stands for it's A-double-S. Yeah, our waterfalls depend on snowmelt. Very true. Ray, nope. Like 2003. Oh, you're young, Ray. 1982, I was in Tallahassee, Florida, and it snowed my freshman year of college. Ray Westman. I'm in Vermont right now. It snows all the damn time in Vermont. Everybody knows it snows all the damn time there in Vermont. Russell is from Memphis, Tennessee. He's over there in Memphis. Memphis, Tennessee. Russell, you're not far from getting this snow. I mean, you're not really far from getting snowfall at this event there in the southwestern side of town. If you go across the river there, if you were to make your way up northward along 55, you'd probably run into some snow right about Blytheville, I think. Just on the other side of the river. It's probably going to be the snow line, maybe Paragould, somewhere there into Jonesboro. It is. It's all Alabama here into the chat tonight, which is okay. We're fine with that. We appreciate Alabama folk. But I know we got people all over the place. Somebody was up into Quebec. Is somebody up into Quebec? We got Quaalude Charlie. I don't think too many people know what Quaalude is, Charlie. It's raining here in St. Louis. I see it, but it's going to change. Lude, it's going to change. It's going to become something else here pretty soon. You're going to see snow coming up here pretty soon. Down in Daphne, Alabama, we're facing tornadoes Tuesday night. Jumpman flight. Down there in Daphne, Alabama, one of my favorite spots down there. Love me some Bon Secours. Go down to the river, Wolf Bay, Bon Secours, Wolf River there. Oyster Bay, actually it is, along the Intercoastal Waterway. But Daphne, Alabama, we'll be looking for rain and thunderstorms that will be coming that way. Let me just tell you about what's happening in Daphne in detail. Now that I've stalled enough and maybe the 3 kilometer has come in just a little bit better. How many hours do we have? Oh my Lord. Why is it taking so long? Let me show you. It's on the east side of the Mobile River. Of Mobile Bay is Daphne, Alabama. Right here just south of the tunnel. There's a tunnel that goes across Mobile Bay. And who is it from Daphne? It'd be who was it from Daphne? That just sped on up there. Oh, Jumpman Flight. Jumpman Flight down in Daphne, Alabama, facing tornadoes. Let's talk about when that stuff is coming through. There's Daphne, northeastern side of Mobile Bay. Here's your composite radar, or should be. Come on, baby. Oh my gosh, we're still not out far enough. Let me do that. Give me 1 second here, brother, because I wanted to help you. Let's don't do that. Let's do that. Now let's do that. And go further down the line here. Put that into motion. Nothing is running the way I want it to tonight. Nothing is running the way I want it to, because that's not going to go out to 48 hours now. I don't think. Well, I would say that. My producer in my ear just said a bad word, but I can't say that on the air. All right, so let's, here we go. We're going to do this. We're going to go back to the NAM, but we'll take it back to 18Z. We'll let it load at 18Z, and I'll tell you when that line is coming through Daphne, Alabama. Here we go. Right there. I'll stop it right there. We'll go on to the end right here. So this is like midnight. This is overnight Wednesday into Wednesday morning. The line is still back into New Orleans at this point. But some of the showers, some of the thunderstorms, and these, again, single-cell thunderstorms coming into southern Mississippi at this point. That'll be Gulfport, back over to Pascagoula, Goshen, into Mississippi there too, but northward all the way up here, back over to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and that's going to be along Highway 98 that comes in, the old one that goes along the beach. Well, 98 goes northward here across the border into Mississippi from the west. That's going to bring us that chance for showers and thunderstorms. At Daphne, you'll already have had a couple of thunderstorms by then into eastern Mobile County, quite possibly. And then there'll be more that'll be on the mark and headed in that general direction that'll probably start to show up. In between midnight and 6 a.m., I think early in the morning, is when your likelihood, Wednesday morning, your likelihood of bigger thunderstorms will be popping in there in Daphne. Now, let me get caught up. DeSoto is now charging to get into the falls. DeSoto is? Well, I live up here in DeKalb County, so I know what you're talking about. Used to kayak the flat water there at DeSoto. Well, I'll be dang. I didn't know they were charging. I was over at Little River Canyon not long ago, and there was some people kayaking there. Dean Barry, who joins us tonight, actually, Dean is with us here at LSM Television. He's directing this evening. Dean Barry Perry, as we call him here. he is everyone is so southern tonight. Samuel Camp, for whatever reason, the models load into Omega kind of slow. Yeah, kind of doing that tonight, aren't they? Quaalude Charlie says, yep, I see it. Thank you for the forecast. You are welcome, Lude. DJ Moore says, I have a buddy in Alabama. I'm in Macon, Georgia. In Macon, Georgia, how they look. Yeah, that's what we're just kind of talking about. Been talking about that this evening. They're in the slight risk. There's a slight risk that goes through that portion, and we can pull that back up for you here in a minute. There's a slight risk on Tuesday that goes all the way up into that area. Brett Adair, the extraordinaire, says that there may actually be an enhancement to that. We may go from a little bit of an upgrade. It is possible. He nor I make that decision. The folks at SPC, Severe Storms Prediction Center out of Norman, Oklahoma, they make that decision. Here's your risk as we go into the day on Tuesday. You can see that goes all the way back to the west of San Antonio, Texas, with a general risk. And obviously, from west to east, you can cut that off as we go through the day. But the slight risk runs all the way from New Orleans, Louisiana, right back up into Gulfport, Mississippi, and as far north, almost as Birmingham, Alabama. That's that dot up there is Calera, where the radar is in Calera, Alabama, down there into Chilton County, and then all the way down to the south, almost to Bay County, Florida. Actually past Bay County, Florida, really, I think. We're looking at Walton County. There's where it cuts off really into the wiregrass of south and eastern Alabama near Dothan. And that doesn't mean that you can't get one out of the area, though. Where's my man? Where's the Whizzle man who was complaining about SPC? I wanted to see his take on why he thought SPC didn't do a good job today. There was a tornado in a marginal risk. And it's a borderline having one tornado to look at. I don't know if you can go total slight. I can go slight for that, but it's a close call. Y'all be safe if you're in the bad weather areas. Prayers to you from Ray. That's very kind of you. Very, very sweet, Ray. Jump in flight is a more straight line wind or tornado through it. Is it a more? Both. It will be both, depending on where you are. The further south you are, the more likely it is to be a tornado threat with a combined straight line, sort of a scenario that we tag to it that could happen. The further north you go, the more likelihood of seeing straight line winds. Some as gusty as 40 to 50 miles per hour, I think. Overnight Tuesday, like after dark Tuesday into the west, it goes overnight Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning. That is a straight line sort of event, 40, 50 miles per hour. Winds will be possible in and along that sort of a situation there as it goes on by. Whizzes on by. Whizzle man just whizzes right on by you there. If you look up, you'll see the blue line go over your head there. But you better be ready for it because it'll be whizzing on by. Where did the whiz go? Yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at. More of a sort of an event like that. Laura John's up there. She lives in Warner Robins, 25 minutes from Macon, Georgia. I know it well. Been to the base there. One of my good buddies works out of the base there at Warner Robins. Russell Voller. Russell lives in Germantown, Indiana. So Wednesday, will I get rain or snow? Russell, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to forget you there for just a moment. Let me see what I can find out for you here. You're saying what? Wednesday. Let's just talk about what you get in in Germantown. There's Germantown, Tennessee. Is it Illinois? I honestly can't see that. Is he talking about Tennessee? Is it a TN or an IN there? If that monitor's a little far away from Tennessee. Germantown, Tennessee. Oh, yeah, not a problem. That is an area there that, again, will be on the northern side of everything. You're not in the snow event there at all. Germantown is right there just north of Collierville. It looks like a little bit east of, I think Germantown's a little bit east of Memphis. So, well, here, maybe I can find it on this map. There's Germantown. It is basically Memphis, so you're in that area there. The low pressure is not going to be far from you, but you're probably going to be in a gradient wind situation there where the high winds will be coming through. What time is this? This is about midnight when the greatest amount of gradient would be there. The storm coming in from your south, so you are basically right there. The line is right here. It is 8 p.m. at that point. And so if you put that in, where's it going? 8, 9, 10. Gets to you about midnight or so. They're actually, you're on Central Time, so gets you to you there about midnight and then moves on through, and it's probably going to be in association with straight-lined precipitation. There's a threat. There's a tornado threat there, but it's not zero, but it's never really non-zero when we got this kind of a thing. Lauren says, cool beans. Beans, beans, cool beans. One of my favorite movies of all times. Or all time. Moonlight Buzz, how are you? Moonlight, it's good to see you tonight here. This is LSM Television, if nobody told you. I'm Dave Neal. Brett Adair is normally on with us. Dean Barry Perry works with us as well. The Honorable JB is running the board tonight along with Dean. They're both, it takes about 5 people to run the board when I'm talking because I talk so fast and I go to so much different stuff. I'm fast, boy. And so everything kind of ends up going that way here at this point. Oh, no. Did you see what I just did? Don't go to that right now. Give me a second. Ooh. I'm still kind of waiting. I'm stalling, trying to get the run to fill in here, but it's still not. It's almost 9 o'clock, and we don't have the full run from 0 to Z. Got 39 hours out. Stay on me for just a second because we're going to do it this way. We're going to go to something that's probably not as pretty, but is probably showing us that we have full availability of the NAM3K. Regions, Deep South. And let's see. We'll do it. Let me see if we can do it like this. So now you can take it again. This is the NAM3K, and I think we're probably, in this particular situation, we're probably updated all the way here. Let's take a look at, we'll go back to temperatures, we'll go to moisture, precipitation, and type again. And so here again is what we'll be looking at with the whole system coming on through. We're out to 36, 41, 45. Here, see, this has the whole run. And what this says to me is that I got to back out, first of all, because there's quite a bit of heavy snowfall that'll be going on there too. South Central, maybe that'll cover it. Look at this deal. It's a big old event, snow event, and I kind of knew it. I kept seeing it, and I apologize because I live in the South. I live in the state of Alabama, so I've probably overplayed this situation at the moment as a severe risk, and maybe I didn't think enough about you folks there who were going to be going through this as a snow event. And for some of you, the first-time event, this would be a first-time event for the big snow to be coming on through. But this is the new NAM now, and check this out. I'll back it up into time again. We're looking during the day on Tuesday. When the snow starts to move into Texas here early, this is 09Z on Tuesday. You're looking at 3 a.m. Tuesday morning, January the 24th. Watch it go across the panhandle of Texas, work its way across the Red River, into Oklahoma City by daylight. This is 16Z, actually, 10 o'clock into the morning when you'll see that coming in at 10 a.m. And by that point, some of it is switching over. This is going to be that stuff that is like big, fat. I mean, these are this big. These snowflakes are like humongous snowflakes. Will be coming down by that point, up to the size of grapefruits. At that point, there's going to be huge snowflakes, seriously, that'll be coming down because there's liquid content is so high here, and it's precipitating so much. The actual dew point temperature is going to be fairly low, below the freezing mark, and so what will happen is you'll see evaporative cooling taking place. It takes the ability, when it starts raining, precipitating, that is a heat grabber. That is a heat energy killer here. So latent heat is sucked in here, and the temperature then falls down to the freezing point to where you go from a rain to a snow event. And I think that's the case right there. As you look at that, that would be a rain to snow sort of a situation there taking shape. I'll go forward in time. Let's just go out to noontime on Tuesday, and that's what the radar will look like again. I-40. See, we just don't have a lot of detail when it comes to this graphic here. We don't have a lot of detail. Then it's still a linear thing down to the south, cellular into Houston, Galveston area. As it moves along there too, and then we'll get into, let's go to 3 p.m. and beyond, right about dark. This is 0Z on Wednesday, which is, 6 p.m. Central Time. Now you have a cyclone here, a very well-built southern stream cyclone that shows up here. The low pressure center right to the east of Dallas. undercutting the dry air that comes into here. But you got cellular storms here into southern Louisiana. You really got every sort of system here. You got precipitation that's going to be in each different form. Probably going to have some sleet involved here as well, because you got cold air aloft that'll be coming in. Heavy, very heavy snowfall that'll be coming into the eastern side of Oklahoma. Okmulgee comes to mind. Some of those areas into the eastern side of the state that'll just be inundated with rainfall to begin with, heavy snow to end with. And again, our timing here, that is 0Z, dark, if you will, on Tuesday afternoon. Then the general snow works its way further and further to the north. It's going to be heavy right on that southern fringe. It does pull out. We're looking at 12Z on Wednesday morning, which is 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning. When it's gone from northern Arkansas, it's gone from all of Oklahoma. How much does it leave in its wake at this point? If we just look at the moisture, the winter weather, and we'll go down to here to the moisture. No, we'll do a 10-to-1 sort of a ratio, and these are the new. This is brand new, hot off the press. This is the first time you've seen it. Go full screen, if you will, with this. And some of these totals now are substantial. Now we're looking at feet, quite possibly, into the southern portions. What happened? We're looking at feet of snowfall down here on the southern portions, if you will, of the Red River, right there in and along the Red River. As far to the west, we'll say, as, I don't know, you're probably getting into Lawton there, Chickasha, Magnum, right there on the eastern, southwestern side, or just to the north of the river. Wichita Falls, I think that's 11 inches there at Wichita Falls, Texas, Wichita Falls, Texas, maybe over to Sherman, still at about half a foot there into Ardmore. And then there's a belt near Ada, McAllister, northward all the way up through the rest of the area there that just gets pummeled here. We're looking at Oklahoma City. That's a 6 to 7 inch total there too, but just south Lawton to Lubbock. Lawton to Weatherford, really. Medicine Park area, that's going to be some of your heavy, but Chickasha looks to get pummeled there too, with that sort of belt. And the belt goes northward all the way into southwestern portions of Missouri. That's a Joplin area there, southwestern Missouri, up to Springfield, I think. You're still looking at that likelihood there, too. Along, that's I-44 that would be going up through that corridor there, or into the northwestern side. Bentonville, Arkansas, Fayetteville from, what's in that corner? Sulphur Springs, I think, is in the corner there. That 9-7 might be, I don't know, the 9-7 total right there is probably going to be in the northwestern corner. Bentonville, Arkansas, maybe Rogers, somewhere like that. I think Bella Vista, the Hiawassee area. The 7-3 Mountain Home, maybe, over to Berryville, into that region there too, just to the northwest of Fayetteville. And the line looks like it comes all the way down to Little Rock, basically. Russellville, Conway, you probably get some snowfall, but not the big deal. And then goes northward up here into the southwestern corner of Illinois, where we have some heavier snowfall. Poplar Bluff, you get some of the heavy stuff there, but it's north of Cape Girardeau, it looks like. St. Louis is in that belt there, about 3-4 inches of snow. But the big I think the big areas like Cape Girardeau to Mount Vernon to Carbondale, back over to Evansville and beyond. Some of those 7-inch totals work their way into Kentucky now near Lexington at that point too. Huge, heavy snowfall event right here through the heart of Oklahoma, just to the south of the interstate I-40, or just to the north of the Red River Valley. And that is new and brand new from the modeling. The other part of this is the severe. And so real quickly here, I want to look at the severe again. I can show you one of the things that we're looking at is that our CAPE values are still going to be quite low. Let's go backward in time here. SIGTOR, this is something we were looking at. This is the likelihood of having a significant tornado, an F2 or greater. And there is a point there on Tuesday where you have a high number along the coast. This is going to be Victoria, northward, all the way up into Houston, Galveston, where that is a possibility. The SIGTOR is its highest there. That's at noontime on Tuesday. And look how it just barely touches the Gulf Coast at this point. Doesn't get too far to the north. Let me do this. Doesn't get too far to the north. We've got 1s and 2s there. Those are the low numbers for a significant tornado at that point. And surface CAPE sort of reflects the same. It's not a big number here overall. It's a minimal number, basically. Let's just do it this way, into the deep south, and I can show you again. There you go. The numbers, the instability numbers are minimal really throughout the entirety of this event, it looks like at this point. I just don't see high numbers here anywhere at all going from west to east across the map. Jonathan says hello. Jonathan, hey, back at you there. Kimberly Tinker is with us. She's from North Carolina. Kimberly, so nice to see you on here tonight. Ryan Pitt needs to go further to the north. I don't know if he means me or what actually needs to go further to the north, but we'll see. I know Ryan, he's a good egg. Moonlight Buzz is with us. Hello, Lauren. Samuel Camp still with us there. Lauren Jones, hello, Moonlight. Moonlight Buzz is with us. Got a good crowd here tonight. Good crowd. Thank you, everybody, for being with us, because we always get some good information. We always get some discussion going on, and I love discussion. I love talking about the things that happen with our weather here. Hang with me for just a second, because I do want to. We can talk about something else here, because I do want to show you something that came out today that was pretty interesting to me. A graphic came out from the National Weather Service here in Birmingham, Alabama. And I think, will this go full screen here? This is the longest tornado tracks in single tornado paths since 1950 all the way up to 2023 into Birmingham, Alabama. And this is brought out because recently on the 12th we did have that really long path last event. It was 82 miles in length. Old Kingston to Lake Martin on January the 12th of 23. It was 82 miles at the length of that storm. So that's right in there into the top 10 since 1950. And I wanted to show you this as well. This is a graphic to see these arrows here out of the top 10 in the state of Alabama since 1950. My birthday is coming up this week, and I'll be in my upper 50s. If you want to talk about it in temperature terms, I'll be in my upper 50s to low 60s. Everywhere there's an arrow here on the map, I was either on the air as a chief meteorologist in Birmingham, Alabama, or I was alive and in Alabama for 6 out of the 10 events. 6 out of those 10 events, I was either in Birmingham. The arrows indicate when I was a chief meteorologist on the air for all of those events. So I have been around and with this sort of a situation in the state of Alabama. I've seen lots of tornadoes. I got involved in weather as a young lad because I saw a tornado when I was about 8 years old on my way to Grandma's house at a place called Sneed's Crossroads along Highway 278 into North Alabama. There used to be an old John Deere dealership on one side of the road at Sneed's Crossroads, and on the other side was an old cotton mill. You guys don't know what a cotton mill is, but used to when they gather cotton out of the fields there, and there was a lot of cotton in the state of Alabama at that time, they gathered up, and they had these big trailers that would pick up the cotton. And the trailers that would do so were kind of open. They were open at the top, but they were kind of open on the sides as well. And as we drove up the roadway here and approached that intersection, it's called Sneed's Crossroads. We approached the intersection, cotton started falling from the sky, and I was in the back seat of the car, and I was like 10 years old. And my dad said, it's snowing. And he actually believed it. It was like 70 degrees. And in his mind, he probably thought it was snowing. These little cotton balls were falling from the sky when actually a tornado had just gone across the crossroad there, and all the cotton was up into the air and coming down slowly but surely before we got there. And when we got there, there were all these cotton trailers that were along and across Highway 278 there. I was 10 years old when I saw that on my way to Grandma's house, and I was totally enamored at that point and wanted to see more. And that was that's a long, long time ago. So anyway, wow. Thank you, Lizzie. I appreciate that. When you get to my age, though, honest to God, you've heard people say this, you just kind of want to forget about counting them anymore. You just kind of do. It'll take me a minute to figure out. I was born in 64. I don't even really know how old I am anymore. But yeah. I thought that was interesting that I had seen that many. 1973 was the longest path. It was almost 140 miles. I still know people who talk about that event it's the number one. In 1973 is the big event that took place. It went from Greensboro to Centerville Brent, which is in the center of the state. That's why it was named Centerville. And it went all the way over to Mount Cheaha, which is over into Calhoun County, Alabama, on the eastern side, on May the 27th of 73. The XL Reeltown, the number 3 event there that took place in 56, I've never really heard a lot about. And, some of these way, way, way back then, some of these are hard to verify. You know, right now we can take a drone probably and fly the length of any of these paths and stay with the path throughout the entirety. Back then, you'd had to take a chopper, a helicopter, or something in order to do that. In '56, and I don't know, I'm sure they were. I'm sure the National Weather Service had the availability to get a chopper and fly the path, but it's about the only way they'd have figured that one out, I think. Not that many roadways across that portion, the XL area in '56, so don't really know about that one. I was on the air in 2011. In fact, I was caught in the number 7 storm there. I was out working for the Weather Channel and the CBS affiliate in Birmingham, and I was caught in that actual tornado. My vehicle was hit pretty hard. I was in a place called Pratt City, Alabama when it came, and I was on the air, and I was like, someday I'll show you that video maybe. There on April the 27th of 2011. It's not fun to look at, I'll tell you that. And then April the 3rd of '74, I've heard people talk about it. I know people who were in it. The Guin Delmar storm, April the 3rd of '74 too. I don't remember that one either. But the 21st, the one that was March 25th, the Sawyerville to Wilsonville, that's out near the dam there in 21. I happened to be in town. I was living in Denver, Colorado, but I happened to be in town for that March event when it took place. So anyway, that's what's going on. Samuel George says good night, y'all. Lizzie says night, Samuel. Back at you, baby. Josh still talking about stuff. Palm Sunday, yep, 94. Palm Sunday. Big time event there, Palm Sunday. I've actually seen the video of the small church there on Highway 9 in East Alabama. There was a small church where the pastor of the church there lost her children, lost her daughter. There were a lot of, that's there on Highway 9 right near Terrapin Creek where that thing moved through on Palm Sunday. That still kind of gives me bad memories there, but that was a very deadly storm there, Palm Sunday of 94. So a lot of stuff happening there, too. You'll be 59. Thank you, Lulu. I will be 59. I'll be 59 this week. Mount Cheaha is a great place to visit, is it not, Brandon? That's a great place to go visit. Mount Cheaha. I used to go there, do live reports up there at the top. Used to... it's kind of like going to Mount Eagle Mountain in Tennessee, where you can see a whole lot of different weather there because of the height differential there across that area too. Anybody got a question? I see we have a lot going on here at the moment with a good conversation, but has anybody got a question or two that you'd like to ask? Because I'd sure love to answer. Love to talk about anything that you want to talk about, as long as it's got to do with the weather. We don't do politics here. We do Major League Baseball from time to time. We do some other stuff too. And speaking of which... this is something else that I pulled out of the hat just a few moments ago, because climatologically speaking, don't ask me to say that again, climatology says since 1982 all the way up to 2011, if we were going to have a tornado at this time of the year, if it were an F2 or greater, the likelihood of it being 25 miles within this point says that the southeastern United States is where you would find one. Climatologically speaking, on average, this area right here in the southern and eastern sections of Tennessee, North Alabama, western sections of Mississippi, that is all the area there where if you're going to have one, climatology says, an F2 or greater, it would be within 25 miles of that bullseye point right there. So it does happen. You know, everybody says it's a rarity what's going on here at the moment. Not so rare. I do remember cycles, being the chief meteorologist at a local television station in Birmingham for 10 years, 12 years, I don't remember what it was. There was a time or two where we considered this winter part of the season as the primary. It wasn't really the secondary anymore. We considered it as primary because you go through cycles. And when you think about the life of the earth, you know, we go through cycles from time to time. We don't actually stay the same forever. And if you go back in time, we have cycled through this sort of situation many, many times before. And as a result, you see different things happening at different times of the year. Speaking of which, the other part of that, again, is going to be the fact that we're going to see over the next 10, 12 days or so, 6 to 10-day forecast says there is a below normal trend in temperatures that will be taking place across the north. I mean, way below, too. Some of the really cold stuff will start moving in across the upper portions of the north, and we'll have below normal conditions there, near normal or above, into the southeastern United States. It's already a trend taking place, and that's why we're sort of seeing this go around, if you will, of these sort of spring-like systems here overall. Again, this time to come, we're not going with a lot of instability. We're going with more shearing, which is the reason for the forecast that is ahead. The shear numbers are going to be very, very high. We're going to have a lot of high-level winds and a jet stream that will be coming in at the 700 millibar mark. That's going to make this a little bit more of an event than it would if you were just dependent solely on those dew point conditions to be there into the 70s. That's not the case this go-around when it comes to this system. We're going to be waiting, awaiting, if you will, the situation to be taking place. Severe storms are possible. The Jackson Meteorology. Let me take a deep breath here. Jackson, National Weather Service office in Jackson, Mississippi. All my buddies over there. And what we're looking at here is I-55, and they've gone with a slight. They didn't, the Severe Storms Prediction Center, but this is where the slight risk goes there from Meridian back over to Laurel into Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It's a 2 there. Severe storms, tornadoes are possible. Timing is late Tuesday into the early part of the evening. Some strong winds are likely in both of these areas as well. Late Tuesday into Tuesday night. The elevated threat is going to be into the orange from Yazoo City. Over there, Yazoo City, Mississippi, home of Jerry Clower. I-55 along 20 over to Vicksburg as well. Some of your heavier precipitation should be there too. Flash flooding is possible in and along the area there from the central and northern sections of the Mississippi River from Greenville down to Vicksburg into the Natchez, Mississippi region, Brookhaven to McGee along I-20, 59 that goes northern down to Hattiesburg. That is somewhat of a limited risk there, but there's going to be some heavier amounts of precipitation that should be taking place. That will indeed bring us some better chances of having at least enough moisture to kick off some localized flash flooding, rivers, streams, ditches, whatever you call them. That's what we're basically looking at here, and it ends up pretty much being in that sort of a situation. Michael Beard says, trying to talk too fast and you end up in a kerfumble. You end up kerfumbled. And there we are. Josh, go ahead, but we're going to dock your pay. Tanya says, if you're out chasing on Tuesday, what would be your thoughts for staging on Tuesday, Tanya? Staging, actually, you know, here's the thing. That's a great question, Tanya, and I appreciate you asking me. If it were me, I'd stay on the interstate. I'm an interstate guy. I don't get off of them unless there's really, really, really good reason to. You know why? Because you can travel so much faster on an interstate than a county road with a bunch of other people in front of you, especially a west to east interstate. So I'd stay in and near I-10 probably throughout the entirety of this event. If I was going to stage up, I'd probably go somewhere over to eastern Texas if you could. If you didn't want to and you wanted to stage up somewhere in the central or southern portions of Louisiana, you could do that as well. But I think the event begins in southeastern Texas, first of all, during the early part of the day on Tuesday. And if I were staging, I'd be there near Lake Charles on I-10 sometime early in the day, and I would follow and stay ahead of everything. I like to stay ahead so I can see because once this thing, they're moving at about, I think we got a 40 mile per hour right now, sort of an average movement west to east at about 40 miles per hour. And with that, I would say that you're probably looking at the fact that you could barely stay ahead of this if you travel 50 on I-10, 50 to 55, which means you would still be, getting some video. Now, here's the trouble, is if you're traveling east on I-10 out ahead of the system, somebody got to be shooting out the back, or you got to pull over every once in a while. But I'd probably stage it that way. I'd go somewhere along I-10 and follow it in as it moves all throughout the area. The cellular part of this, the ones that will be the supercells that are easier to see, safer to be in, much easier to see and photograph, I'd be out ahead of those enough. And on the eastern side, they're rain-free. So you should be able to see the quality of your video should be a whole lot better at that point. Michael, you didn't know you're supposed to be getting paid? Tanya says, always on the interstate. He was joking, Michael. I was joking, Michael. Because Branvis. That's his new, that might be your new nickname, Branvis. Branvis, like Angelina. Branvis, Jarvis, Brandon, Jarvis. So what the wind gusts for Atlanta going to be? There'll be some wind gusts up to 50 probably in Atlanta as we move along. Stay right there for just a second. Let's go, because I want to show you why. Here's why I know that, how I know that. If you go to the 850 and look at some of the upper level winds here, upper level wind, let's go to the 850 wind speed and heights. Can you pull this back up here? I don't know. Maybe will this show it better? These are the winds. Like this is 12Z on 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and the low pulls away North Georgia into the mountains. Like Yona, the Blue Ridge there. Over the western side, if you will, the Blue Ridge Mountains there across North Georgia. Some of those mountains are going to be in the 17 to 20 mile per hour range into the afternoon. During the day on Wednesday, though, but it starts pretty early in the day. There's some 10 to 12s there early in the day. The overnight hours on Tuesday night into early Wednesday, that's a possibility too. And so got to watch out for that. Some of the swaths here indicating that there's a 40 to 50 mile per hour swath that runs across North Georgia. These are wind speeds in miles per hour. And so the swath is pretty easy to see from the southwest to the north and east, meaning that our low is going to jet up about 150 miles north and west of that swath and move on kind of in that general direction. Photojournalist Michael Beard says, you don't chase Tuesday. You sit and let them come to you. In other words, Michael wants you to fail miserably, so that he can get all of the video. You can let him come to you. You can sit and wait and let him come to you, have a drink and some Fritos, and let it come to you, and then about an hour and a half later, you're out of the hunt. Because once they come to you and they're on you, you can never, ever catch back up again. And I know this for a fact. There's no such thing as, I'll catch back up. No, you won't. Liar, liar. Pants on fire. Oh, you remember that water I put on the floor? That was it. Now my butt's numb again. Michael isn't chasing. I know. Michael's just trying to get in your head. Michael's one of those guys. Michael, I know Michael really well. Michael used to be a boxer. He's one of those guys. He's a hype guy is what he is. Who else we got? So true, Tanya says. Catching up's not an option. Now Michael says, floor it. Michael. What else we got? Anybody else got any kind of information they want to pass along? Another question, perhaps? I think we got some questions up there. I don't know if we scrolled on by those, but that's kind of where we are at the moment. I don't think I've got anything new that's coming in later on tonight after 10:30. Around 10:30, the GFS model comes in, but I don't like the GFS in a short-term sort of scenario myself. The GFS has already given us what it could give us into the long term. Now we're going to depend on our short term, our rapidly refreshing models that take place, the HRR, which is an hourly sort of a thing that goes out to 18 hours, except at 4 times of the day, 0, 12, 6, and the other one. When we start looking at the 06 is when we start looking at those, because then it goes out to 48 hours. Here's a question from Derek Baker. Derek, what's up, dog? So great to talk to you. Appreciate that. Question. SPC seems to have left the door open for more moisture instability than models currently suggest. A worrisome scenario. How far will the SPC Mets know if it will not happens? Let me. Okay, it's a great question. It's an awesome question, actually. And if I knew what they thought, I have friends who've worked at SPC before. And if I knew what they thought all the time, boy, how awesome would that be? But I don't know. I just know what I know. And I know what I know from looking at models for the entirety of my life, basically. And picking them out, watching trends and that kind of thing, and sort of seeing what's going on. If you're looking for something in the modeling right now that would energize your thoughts, that would make you think this is, if we push that Cape number a little bit further to the north, if we push the K index a little further to the north, the SIG Tor, if it comes out of the Gulf of Mexico a little bit to the north, if that energizes you a little bit, I wouldn't really count on that being a theme, because none of this, think about it again, none of this is literal. None of the modelings are a literal thing. This is not an exact science. It is a liquid. And when you start thinking of it as a liquid, you'll get it. You'll understand what's happening. But in the situation today, how about we do that? We still have 150 of you on here. Let's, if you want to, because I don't really have anything else I feel like I need to say. Let's look at, is Georgia on here? Georgia is on here. Let's look at what happened today, and we'll go to the model earlier. We'll go to the 12Z from this morning and see what the model said for Georgia for today. We know what happened, so now we can do an analysis of what happened today and sort of go from there. But here's what happened today, and we go back to this morning. And right now, the map that you were looking at, let's just do, we'll just start out with our Cape number from this morning and show you where we were. Now, this is a combination of the ability for the atmosphere, the partial barrier to rise rapidly. It's an indication of instability that is happening into the atmosphere. And so our Cape numbers are well off of the Gulf of Mexico at this point, but coming onshore somewhere there into the panhandle. And let me do this right here. I still have to have my little button up here on the top. This is our Cape from this morning. The timing on this is 13Z, so 7 o'clock this morning, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And I'll move forward in time to show you as we go along. 16, 17, 18. And if you notice, right there at the last minute there at 19Z, 2 o'clock into the afternoon, which is an hour before we started having tornado warnings, look at these Cape values. They went into the 100 to 200 numbers here. These are joules per kilogram. That doesn't mean anything to you, and it doesn't really mean anything to me either, except it's a low number. Sometimes we follow storms with 1,000 or so, and we get concerned. 500 this time of the year kind of concerns me if everything else is there. But then you move forward in time, you see the Cape value didn't go up very much at all, and barely. So we had, what, max Cape value there of 600 or so. That was just to the south of where the tornado occurred, actually. The known tornado today occurred there in that Cape value, right there on the border of 500 and 600. So you don't have to have a huge instability number there in order for that to happen. Let's look at our dew points through the day today and what was forecast as far as the dew points go. And the dew points at that point were showing us that we had most of our higher dew points were offshore at that point still. But if I put this into motion here a little bit, 13Z this morning, which is 8 o'clock Eastern time. Move this along here as we go through. That was hour 2. This is the 12Z run from early this morning in the NAM 3K. And now the dew points. You can see where we had the tornado. 52 degrees this morning was the dew point, just south of Alma, and 48 the other area there that we were looking at, where we had the dew points that were, chilly dew points, dry dew points, where all of this took place, almost just north of Waycross there, just to the west of Brunswick, if you will, and Jessup. Let me see if I can find some other information here really quickly. Adele is too far to the south. So look at this. Our dew points don't go above 60 until you get down here near Tallahassee Bainbridge. They were at 61, and this was right there at 15Z. At noontime, which would have been right there, noontime, Eastern time, 17Z, notice how rapidly the dew points jetted up into the 60s, right about there. The wave of low pressure had already passed by, and now we had a little warm front that was extending off to the east that drove our dew points from the low 60s in South Georgia, from the 40s you can see to the north, to the low 60s and mid 60s down here into South Georgia. And our tornado took place right along that 60-degree isotherm. It wasn't that warm where a significant tornado of some sort. I saw there was a debris signature there, there was obviously something that was aloft into the atmosphere at that point. And then the dew point stayed into the low 60s there. There was definitely a gradient that got knocked off, a thermal gradient there from the 40s to the 60s all the way down to the coast. And that atmosphere was rich. And it was also ready to spin at that point, where we had the ability for this thing to spin and rotate and to produce a tornado early in the day. So that was one of the other things that we were looking at there when all this was going down. Helicity values were not off the chart. Again, this is where we were there. Let's see, this morning. There was some helicity there at that point at 15Z, 15, but the tornado took place right about here at that time frame, and there was some helicity there at that point. Shear values were lopsided at that point, 0 to 3, 0 to 3. The updraft tracks, shear tracks, kind of, you can see them there. That was again at 20Z, so right there around 3 o'clock into the afternoon Eastern time, which is when that all took place too. So right there at that point, borderline severe weather conditions. It was all very borderline, where we had a significant tornado take place. So it does happen. And you can't always go with just these numbers because they're not literal. They're extrapolated. And they're extrapolated. Some of them are extrapolated by the hour, and others are extrapolated by the 3 hour. So we'll never get it down to knowing in the morning exactly where a tornado is going to occur. That'll just be impossible. As smart as things are getting, you'll never really know. Which I just thought of something. Southern Life. Do you think South Florida will continue to see these colder days? No. Super duper anomaly. You just had your second go around there of what you would consider Arctic weather or iguana, bad iguana weather. And so I don't think so. I don't think we're there. In fact, over the next 2 weeks, it really looks like there's a huge warming trend that'll take place into South Florida and should be above the norm when it comes to temperatures there. Well, Derek makes a great point. Derek says, in terms of public safety, always worry about folks with the atmosphere when it overperforms like it did early in the day today. It underperformed a week ago. Do you remember that? It underperformed just a couple of days back. Again, you'll never be able to pinpoint it exactly. There's just no way that can happen. But I think we are lulled by the fact that I don't know that if I'm in a marginal risk, I'm not paying attention every minute of every day. Probably if I'm a regular person, if I'm a normal person, I'm a Met, so I am. But in a marginal sort of situation, it was a marginal risk early in the day. If you got the people that you follow yourself on television or whoever you follow to get your immediate weather information, a marginal risk to them as a presenter doesn't make them go overboard with the way they're presenting to you. If I'm a television presenter at that point, there's a marginal risk. It is a fine line on how you play that up when you're talking to your audience as a television meteorologist, because you can overplay stuff, and when you miss enough times, they'll call you out on it, or they just won't listen anymore. Which is, that's the sad part of it, is that we as consumers, as weather consumers, and I'm a different consumer than you are when it comes to the weather. I think many of you are of a generation that is so good at forecasting now. I mean, we can look at something that's off of the coast of Africa as a small little spin, and sometimes it's 2,200 miles away coming off of Africa south of the Azores, and we can decide where it's going to be in the Gulf of Mexico 14 days later. And sometimes it's within 100 miles of where the computer model said it was going to be. It's ruined us. Some of that really, really good forecasting has totally ruined our consumption of the weather, because it makes us then depend on exact points again, and you just can't do that. My advice to you is to always be a little bit skeptical. And be careful who you're, especially when it comes to the web. Now, it scares me to death, the stuff that's happening on the interwebs, my generation would say, because it's all about the thumbnail, the exacerbation of information to make it clickable. I think Yins call it clickbait. But then after you click and they get your click, make sure the person that you're watching knows what the frick they're talking about. And the thing I've been going with here that I preach here quite often is, if you ain't been in one and you haven't seen one and you weren't there afterwards when there were people hurt, you haven't flown into one, and you haven't been there when one was making landfall, why do you think you should be able to talk about it and be an expert? You, as a consumer, you might make up your own deciding factors, but for me, I don't think I want to consider, I don't want to really make an expert out of the person who hasn't been in one, who's never been in one, who never saw one live outside of their desk, who never saw the aftermath of one and what it's like for people to walk around not knowing where they were, where their house was standing, or to fly in one. I've flown into 3 times. I've flown into a hurricane with the 403 wing out of Biloxi, Mississippi. I learned more from those flights than anybody ever told me about on television. I learned more from seeing it. I've been on the coast. Brett and I were in Irma last year, but I've been in, I don't know how many I've been in. My first one was back into the 80s. The first one I met, Hurricane Gilbert down in Mexico. I'm not telling you, and by the way, right now I'm not saying you got to watch me only. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying be careful about who you do pick out to watch, because there's clickbait out there, and we should all be smart enough to then go, all right, they got me to click, but is this a person I really want to be responsible for my safety and my family's safety? And I bet you if you grab that person, if you could actually talk to that person who's on the air claiming that they know what they're talking about, if you could say, do you really want your family to be watching you right now? Are you going to be responsible for all of these lives? Do you really feel like you deserve to be responsible for all these people's lives and the information you're giving? It doesn't bother you at all that you might be giving out some sort of information that might be incorrect for somebody out there whose family's depending on getting the information that is real and knowledgeable, and somebody who knows what they're talking about? You want a doctor to look at your body who's never been inside one or made a cut before? Do you want that doctor to operate on you? I might be being cynical a little, but it is kind of that simple. It really is that simple in this day and age of clickbaits and people telling you that there's one that I keep coming back to, and I don't know the people. They don't bother me. I don't know them, but their button, their thumbnail was, we were just, and it's 3 people in a car, and they're all like, they look like they're laughing about it, but they're in their car, and they were, the thing was, we were 15 minutes away from death. And that was the tagline in the thumbnail. We were 1,500 feet, 1,500 feet from certain death. And I thought, if that's what it's about, just get in the middle of the interstate and step outside your door, open the door up and step outside. Is that really the best qualifying factor that you can be near death? I don't know. We just lost 5 people, so I'm going to shut up. Huge storm coming. Watch out. Yeah, I'm making our thumbnails now for us. I'm trying so hard not to be, although I've been in the business forever, and it is all about promotion. I get that. If I were to just say, we're going to talk about the weather tonight, join us at 8 o'clock, I don't know how many people would show up. So you do always want to make it sound like it's going to be interesting, and I always hope it is, especially when we're talking. So, Flying with the Hurricane Hunters. Oh, absolutely. An intern of mine in Chattanooga, Tennessee, many, many years ago became the PIA for the 403 out of Biloxi, Mississippi. He's also an expert Elvis impersonator at the Hard Rock Cafe down there, but he is Colonel Chad Gibson now, and I knew him back when he was a young boy. He worked for me in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He invited me to go on a couple of flights, and I did, and I think I still hold a record for the largest cooler ever brought on a flight. It's the BJ Hercules C-130, and I think I brought a 64-quart cooler. He said I could bring a cooler because we might be up 12 to 13 hours. We flew to Cuba, over Cuba, and I got to talk to the Cuban occupant weather person there in western Cuba as Hurricane Ike flew over the western side of Cuba. I got to speak with that person a little bit. Believe it or not, I knew a little Spanish back then. I had 4 semesters of it. Spanish was a requirement. A foreign language was a requirement at Florida State University in order to get your meteorology degree. It was kind of the weed out. I was having to take Spanish. Ferraro, it's good to see you tonight. Ryan Pitt. Ryan says, Tanya, I'm a pilot. No, you wouldn't be scared. Look, I was scared flying, period, and he invited me to go. This huge prop plane. It's a prop plane, the C-130. J. Hercules prop plane. You sit in netting. There are no seats. You sit in netting on the sides of the plane. And I sat across from the extra pilot. There was an extra pilot there. And I sat purposely across from him. He was on the other side of the netting. This is a true story, I swear to God, and I have photographs of this if somebody wants to call me up. I sat across from him, and I decided that if he looked concerned, that I would worry. But if he didn't, if he never looked concerned, then I wouldn't worry about it. And KB, I wonder if we buffered. Our kilobaud rate went. No, now we're buffering. We lost it for just a second. We buffered for a second there. We're coming back. Anyway, I wonder if that was like a freaking sign or something not to tell this story. Sorry, we lost our kilobytes there for a second in our feed. Apologize for that. Anyway, I'm on this flight. Extra pilot sitting there across from me. He never looks up. He's reading a book, and I swear to you, it was called Twilight. The Air Force dude was reading one of the Twilight books, and he never looked up. And so we had some stuff from time to time, and we did. I've actually got some pictures of it here. I'll try to pass these along to you here very quickly. I think I do have some photographs that I had the other day I was kind of looking at because it was an amazing trip there overall. And I went a couple of other times, but not into a hurricane. Hurricane Ike ended up being a pretty big storm when we were in it there, and I learned a lot of stuff from that too. Other than that, I don't think we have any more information as far as anything updated here. We still haven't heard back from Brett, and so I don't think we are going to either at this point. That is frozen. Just can't win here at the moment. I don't really know what's going on. But anyway, I appreciate you being with us, and Tanya loves the Twilight book. So, let's see. Ian was no fun. Yeah. None of them are fun. I worked for Fox Television when Hurricane Katrina came through. I worked for Fox, so the very next day, I was one of the chief Mets for the Fox affiliates across the nation. They sent me down to Katrina, to the Superdome. I went down there the day afterwards, and I was a reporter down there. And I reported there for 3 days. It was nasty. It was unbelievable what was going on there. But I brought 2 women home with me who were survivors of Hurricane Katrina. One that was rescued from the top of her home there in the lower 9th Ward, and another one who was down in Houma, Louisiana, and evacuated but made it to the Superdome. And I brought those 2 ladies home with me, and they lived with me for about a year. And after that, until they found homes otherwise. And that was an experience that was beyond belief, actually, hearing about their stories. One of them, again, was a librarian there in the lower 9th Ward, had to be rescued by boat from the top of her 2-story apartment building there in New Orleans on the other side of the interstate. But the whole Superdome thing, The stories are unbelievable, so it's all kind of a weird sort of scenario. Chip Campbell says he kind of knew a guy who died in a plane crash this year. It was I got a guy I kind of knew died in a plane crash this year. Wanted to become a pilot. Okay. We worked Port St. Joe, Mexico Beach after Michael. Yeah, that's a huge story there too. I was on the air in when what's that guy's name? Brett Adair was down there in Michael, and we're both famous for me for a different reason than him. All right, guys, it's a little bit late here, and I appreciate you being with us so much tonight. We really do. We had a little update on what we're going to be doing. We're going to be covering the storms live during the day on Tuesday, and it looks like right now it'll probably be a little bit of an early day when it comes to the cellular stuff coming in on Tuesday into the early part of the day. I do think we're going to see some of those early morning storms that will be popping up in eastern sections of Texas as we go through the day. Now that let me see how much of the new NAM that I can get here. It's still not. The 0Z just didn't load in Omega, really. But we can look back at the very beginning of the situation. Can you pull my iPad back up here briefly, and I'll show you. Here comes the system out of the Gulf of Mexico. This is 1 p.m. on Tuesday when Waco southward to San Antonio will be the line. New linear storms by that point. Houston, Sugar Land, all the way down to Port Lavaca, it looks like. Anywhere there, northward to the Galveston, Houston area, Galveston Bay, Port Arthur, into the Sabine River area there too. This is 1 p.m. during the day on Tuesday, and I think we could have warnings about right there for either a couple of water spouts coming on shore or some tornadoes. 3 o'clock into the afternoon, Beaumont, Port Arthur, linear system still right there along 45 coming out of Huntsville, Texas, all the way down to Sugar Land, and then right on the Sabine River, Toledo Bend Reservoir area there, right about 6 p.m. dark time, just to the west of Lake Charles, Louisiana, and continuing its pass on to the east, so to Baton Rouge, up to Natchez, Mississippi, and all the way over into Houma and beyond. And we go up to the midnight hour, Tuesday night into early Wednesday when it's lined up. Now we're starting to see bow segments here, really. I think this bow segment's out the latter part of the day that we get bow segment there, there, and there. But still, we know we do get tornadoes out of that situation when that does occur. So maybe early in the day into eastern Texas is when we'll be joining you here live on LSM-TV. Brett Adair out and about, as well as all of the LSM crew. We'll be hearing from some of them live from time to time during the day on Tuesday. That is our hope and wish, that we can go bam, bam, bam. In-car camera, you can learn about what's happening ahead of you if you watch us during the day. On Tuesday, you can see what's going on with all of the mini cameras out and about that we should have during the day on Tuesday within the LSM system. And so we'll do that for you. And for now, I hope everybody gets a good night's rest tonight. Coming up on 9:53 Central Time, 10:53 into the east, an hour earlier back into the west on Mountain Time. I'm meteorologist David Neal. Brett Adair was with us. The formidable Dean Perry Barry has been directing at times tonight, as well as BJ. Both of them working their tails off back into the offices, the studios, the what do we call them? The home office, which we have 2 satellite home offices now. So we are expanding greatly with our 2 satellite home offices now that we were doing remote directing and beyond. So Lizzie, thank you very much for watching. Ferraro, thank you so much. G. Ferraro, Russell, good to see you. Love you too, Russell. Really appreciate your viewership here tonight. And all of you, the Bad Zodiac official YouTube channel. We had another tornado today in South Georgia. You're tad late. Tad late on that one. But we'll be back with more information for you again. Hope that you are safe and sound.